Hello there, senior high school students, and welcome to Business Mathematics. In this video, we are going to feed your minds with valuable information to improve your mathematical skills and how it applies to business. I am Sir Chad, your guide in today's lesson. Be ready with your paper, pen, and learning activity sheet as we share another interesting lesson in business mathematics, specifically in the concepts of fraction, decimals, and percentage. Our lesson objective will be, at the end of this session, you are expected to give real situation to illustrate fractions, decimals, and percent, and to solve problems involving fractions, decimals, and percent. Let us start with a quick mental exercise to get us prepped for the lesson. Picture reveal. You are tasked to arrange the numbers shown on the screen in ascending order to reveal the image behind it. Let us start. Please pause this portion of the video to give you time to answer. Once you are done, you can click the play button to reveal the correct answer. So how are we going to go about with this task? One way is by changing all the given in one form, say decimal. Or you can do it in fraction or percent, whichever you like. For this lesson, I will be using decimal form. So let us start. The smallest among the 9 numbers presented there is 0.3%, which is in decimal equivalent to 0.0030. Next, 1/5 in decimal is 0.2 or 2/10. Next, after that is 44.43%. If we write it in decimal is 4,443 10,000ths. Next is 0.43 or 43 thousandths. So this is as it is since it's already in decimal form. Next, we have 0.9 and 1/2. This is an example of a complex decimal which is equal to 0.95 or 95 hundredths. Next, we have 1 and 1/3. In decimal, we can write this as 1.3 with a bar. This means that it is a non-terminating, non-repeating decimal. Next, after that is 7/3 or 7/3, which is in decimal, again, 2.3 with a bar on top. 8, 2.43. So that is written in decimal form, so we write it as it is. And lastly, 300%. In decimal form, this is 3. Okay, the picture reveals a diagram that shows the summary of rules in converting decimal to fraction and percent and vice versa. Let's take a closer look at these rules. The conversion rules for fraction, decimal, and percent, and the different ways of representing an amount. Let us start with converting fraction to decimal. To convert fraction to decimal, we simply divide the top number, which we call the numerator, by the bottom number, which we call the denominator. For example, we have here 3/5 that we will convert to decimal. So the answer here is 0.6. So we arrive at 0.6 by dividing 3 with 5. Next is decimal to percent. To convert a decimal to percent, multiply the number by 100, then affix the symbol with percent sign. An easy way to multiply by 100 is to 1. Locate the decimal point, and to move 2 decimal places to the right. Again, I repeat, 2 decimal places to the right. So as an example, Let's try to convert 0.92 to percent. So by doing so, we locate the decimal point in between 0 and 9. So that is here. And we move 2 places to the right. So moving it to the right means 1, 2. So we will have a final answer of 92%. Next, we have fraction to percent. To convert fraction to percentage, divide the top number or the numerator by the bottom number, which is the denominator, then multiply the answer or the result by 100. For an example, let us convert 1/8 to percentage. So what would happen is we will divide 1 by 8. Okay, so the answer here will be, let me expedite the process. There we go. So the answer here is 0.125. Okay? Now, to convert this to percent, we will just move 2 decimal places to the right. So from here, 1, 2. So we will get a final answer of 12.5%. Next, we have percent to decimal. To convert percent to decimal, we simply divide it by 100 and remove the percent symbol. An easy way to divide 100 is to move the decimal place point 2 places to the left. An example, convert 33% to decimal. So what we will do is, again, we will put as an assumed decimal place on here, move it 2 decimal places to the right. So we will have a final answer of 0.33. Moving on. Next, we have to change decimal to fraction. So to convert 0.5 to fraction, first, we must write the decimal over the number. So the number here is 0.75. We divide it by 1 to represent it as a fraction. Then, since there are 2 decimal places for 0.75, we can write this as 75 over 100. Okay, so since this fraction here can still be simplified, we can divide this both by a common number, which is 25 over 25, having our final answer at 3/4. Okay, and lastly, we convert percentage to fraction. To convert percentage to fraction, first, we must convert the decimal by dividing it by 100. Then, using the steps to converting decimal to fraction, we will be having, so for 80%, we move 2 decimal places from here to the left. We will get 0.80. Since we have 2 decimal places over here, we divide this by 100. Simplifying this would yield to 4 over 5 or 4/5. Okay, reminders on the steps in adding or subtracting decimal. First one is we have to find the least common denominator. So this is true if the fractions that we are going to add or subtract are of different denominators, or what we call dissimilar fractions. Now, After that, we will write both the equations as equivalent fractions or with the least common denominator. And after that, since both of them have the same denominator, we add or subtract the numerators and write the result with the denominator. Now, if the answer is not in simplest form, we have to write it out in simplest form all the time. We suggest that you write it in improper fraction or a proper fraction. Next, to multiply fractions, we only need to do is multiply the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. Again, these are all for real numbers, meaning A, B, C, and D are elements of real numbers provided that B and D are not equal to 0. Since if both numbers are equal to 0, the fraction will be undefined. So it is written there, A over B times C over D is equal to AC, or A times C over B times D. Again, if the answer can still be written in its simplest form, please do so. And lastly, dividing fractions. To divide fractions, what we do is we multiply it by its reciprocal, meaning we have to change or invert the second value, which in this case is C over D, by its reciprocal, so that becomes now C over D, and then we multiply A times D and B times C. So we will have AD over BC. Again, we note that C should not be equal to 0 and also D should not be equal to 0. Because if those numbers will be equal to 0, the given will become an undefined value. Okay, here are now the rules of operations in decimal. For addition and subtraction, what we need to do is we just line up the decimal points and then add or subtract in the same manner that you would add or subtract whole numbers. You may opt to add zeros as place value holders for those missing decimals. For multiplying decimals, step 1. We multiply the numbers as if they were whole number. No need to line up the decimals. And then, this is the important part, count the total number of places from the right of the decimal point in both numbers you're multiplying. Again, I'm emphasizing the word both numbers you're multiplying. For example, you will be multiplying 0.2 and 1.43. So if we multiply those two numbers, there will be a total of 3 numbers to the right of the decimal point that we will be multiplying. That means that the answer should have 3 decimal places. Okay? And lastly, dividing decimals. In dividing decimals, what we do is, if the divisor is not a whole number, we move the decimal place n places to the right to make it a whole number. Then move the decimal place in the dividend the same number of places you added on the right. You can add some extra zeros if necessary. And we divide the number as usual. There you go. We reviewed all the essentials for solving word problems. Now, I'd like you to try this problem. After receiving the retirement pay, Mrs. Alvarado plans to put up a small internet cafe in their barangay. Her total budget for the business is 600,000 pesos, and she allots 200,000 pesos for computer units. If one computer unit costs 35,000 pesos, what part of her total budget will be actually spent for computer units? Please pause this portion of the video to give you time to answer. Once you are done, you can click the play button to reveal the correct answer. The correct answer is 7 over 24 of her budget will be spent for computer units. Congratulations! You have answered it right. If not, let's go back on the steps on how we arrive with the correct answer. First, we compute the number of units Mrs. Alvarado can buy from 200,000 pesos. So that means we will be dividing 200,000 by 35,000, which is equal to 40 over 70, or in mixed number, we can write it as 5 and 5/7. This means that she can buy 5 units of computer, which costs 175,000 pesos. Thus, the part of the budget to be actually spent for computer is, we get the ratio of 175 and 600,000. That means we simplify it to 7 over 24. Therefore, 7 over 24, or 7/24 of her budget, will be spent for computer units. Congratulations, kids! And now, we are going to brush up on your concepts and the steps in solving a word problem. First one, we identify the problem. So what we do is we read the problem or the question carefully and determine what you need to do or what is being asked in the problem. Second, gather information. Once you know the problem, we gather or identify the given in the problem. List them down so you have a clearer picture. Next, create an equation. Now, in this part, you need to create a plan of action. How will I go about with the problem, given the data you have on the problem in mind? Fourth one, solve the problem. Using mathematics and the rules governing it, solve the problem. And lastly, and most important, verify the answer. Check whether your answer really satisfies the problem. Okay, so let us try some word problems using the concepts of fraction, decimal, and percent. So let's start with the first one. Joseph earned 540 pesos for working 6 hours. How much will he earn if he works 7.5 hours? You may pause this portion of the video to give you time to answer. Once you are done, you may click the play button to reveal the correct answer. To solve, we are looking for the amount of money Joseph will earn after working 7.5 hours. So, we are given that Joseph was paid 540 pesos for working 6 hours. We compute the hourly rate. So, the money earned in an hour is computed by 540 pesos divided by 6 hours. So, that means that Joseph earns 90 pesos per hour. Therefore, the money earned in 75 hours is, what we do is we multiply 77.5 hours by the hourly rate of 90 pesos. We will be getting 675 pesos. Okay, congratulations for getting the correct answer. Next problem. The selling price of a toy is 500 pesos. If the profit is 25%, what is the cost price of the toy? Now, the selling price of the toy is 500 pesos, right? So from the given problem, we know that it is 500 pesos, the selling price, and the profit of the seller should be 25% from the original or the cost price. So we may use this equation to solve the cost of the price of the toy. So since we have it there written, selling price of the toy is 500 pesos, profit is 25% of the cost price, and what is asked is the cost price. So we let X be the cost price of the toy. Having the equation X plus 25%, which is the profit from the cost price of the toy, is equal to 500 pesos. Simplifying the left side of the equation, we will have X plus 0.25x. Both values on the left can be combined. We will be having 1.25x equals 500. Dividing both sides of the equation by 1.25, we will have the answer at x equals 400, meaning The cost price of the toy is 400 pesos. I hope you got that correctly. Next problem. The last problem is the partnership of Handig, Hapa, and Villaroya, which earned a net income of 30,000 pesos. They agreed to divide profits and losses, one half to Handig, one third to Hapa, and the rest to Villaroya. Questions are, what fractional part is Villaroya's share? And compute the share of each in the net income. So this one is a two-part problem. First, we need to determine how much or what would be the share of Villaroya, and we compute the share of each. Okay, so let's start. To compute for Villaroya's share, we need to add the shares of the other two partners and subtract it from 1. Why 1? Since 1 is the total portion or total parts here that is being identified, so we subtract it from that. So what happens is, we let x be Villaroya's share, so that becomes 1 half plus 1/3 plus x equals 1. That means when we add all those three shares, it sums up to 1. Okay, so we now have the equation to x equals 1 minus the sum of 1 half and 1/3. Simplifying 1 half and 1/3, we'll have 5 over 6 or 5/6. We subtract that from 1, we will get the final answer at x equals 1/6. So this means that Villaroya's share is 1/6. So that's the first part of our question. The second part is, what are the share of each? So to compute, we will simply multiply the net income, which is 30,000, by their shares. So for Handig, we will have 30,000 pesos multiplied by 1 half. So that means it is 15,000 pesos. For Hapa, we'll have 30,000 multiplied by 1/3, that is 10,000 pesos. And for Villaroya, we'll have 30,000 multiplied by 1 over 6, which is equal to 5,000 pesos. Congratulations for finishing this part of the lesson. If you have questions, you may just send me a message via the Messenger app, or you can send me a personal SMS via my mobile phone number. Okay, I hope to see you again. This is Sir Chad saying, the only way to learn mathematics is to do mathematics. Bye! See you next time!